Okay, so tell me a little bit about DLC Utah. How did it come about?
So the Disability Law Center of Utah is actually what is known as a protection and advocacy agency. Every state and territory has an organization like ours. We're federally mandated to exist. Back in the late 60s, a young reporter, and you may be too young to know who this is, but he's a man by the name of Geraldo Rivera. Back in the 90s, he was he had kind of like a TV show, and he did a number of things. I think he's on Fox News now or
Mm.
something. He's been
Or
around
was,
forever.
yeah.
Yeah. So he he did a report of an institution in upstate New York called Willowbrook. I think there's actually a documentary on it now, somewhere maybe on Netflix or something, if anyone is curious. But Willowbrook was not a great place. It's where the state had essentially put people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in very, very bad conditions. Geraldo went in with the camera, showed everyone this, and the federal government said, "Oh, we can't allow this. We can't have this." And so they created a network of what are called protection and advocacy agencies. I mean, they created a federal law that was called Protection and Advocacy for Developmental Disabilities. But in a sense, it created this network of agencies like ours that look for abuse and neglect in institutions, but also seek to protect and advance the legal rights, choices, and opportunities of people with disabilities. And so in Utah, the DLC was designated by the governor as the state's protection and advocacy agency. I think back in, if I remember correctly, 1978. It was before my time. So, but that's the date I believe I know. And so, that's what we do. We're a nonprofit legal organization that, we do everything from, representing individual clients in, writing a letter to a business saying, hey, you're violating the ADA in this way, or a housing provider, all the way through litigating cases for clients. We have some class actions we filed, and we do public policy work. So trying to advance laws or ensure laws aren't, created that would violate the rights of people with disabilities. So we have I think a big task, but that's a little bit about what we do. That's probably a lot about what we do. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, yeah, that was literally my next question. But now that you've like covered that a bit, like I want to move on to like any particular like stakeholders that you partner with?
Sure. So in our state, there are a number of organizations we work with regularly, depending on the issue. So there is the Utah Developmental Disabilities Council. I think that's within the Department of Health and Human Services in our state. And obviously they're an organization, looking at issues impacting those with developmental disabilities. And then there's they changed their name. I'm going to get this right. It's the Institute for Disability Research, Policy, and Practice at Utah State University. They used to be the Center for Persons with Disabilities at USU. They recently did a name change. They're also, both of those are part of kind of federal networks as well. The DD Council, there's a DD Council in all states. And then the place at USU, they're called the USED. And I should, at this time in my life, know what that stands for, but I honestly don't. But I know it has something to do with education. And there's kind of one of those in every state as well. And they do a lot of like kind of research and stuff like that around developmental disabilities. But then there's, because our task is big and it's not just developmental disabilities, we also work sometimes with Mental Health America of Utah around mental health issues. Utah Health Policy Project on kind of healthcare issues, Medicaid type of things. AARP Utah does a lot of work with us because the aging population, oftentimes we have a lot of overlap with the disability population. Boy, I'm probably forgetting a bunch of people, but yeah, I mean, we work with a ton of people throughout our state. Whenever an issue arises where there's kind of an intersectional type of issue, I mean, we try and build relationships within communities. So different ethnic communities, we have a good relationship with the Hispanic community, in various ways. And then, trying to reach even the LGBTQ plus community. And like when there's intersectional issues with those groups, we try and find, we work with a number of, I mean, the ACLU often has overlap with what we do as well. So, just to name a lot, I guess, of the places we partner with.
My next question is, what impact does your work have on the disability community?
Well, I hope we have a big impact. That's basically our job, is to try and, like I said, our mission is to enforce and advance the legal rights, choices, and opportunities of Utahns with disabilities. So, like I said, if we get 4,000 calls a year, well, I'll say requests for assistance. Some of those come through onlines, people sending online requests, some people call us, some people send us letters. But we get about 4,000 requests for assistance each year. A lot of those are things we don't do. People hear disability law and they think, oh, maybe you do, you help people get Social Security or other public benefits. That's not what we do, but we do know organizations that do, so we refer those out to a lot of places that can help. So first and foremost, it's trying to make sure that if somebody calls us, getting them to the right place if we're not the right place. And then after that, we have a team of intake advocates that will have a call with somebody, talk about their issue and see if it's something we can assist with. And at a minimum, if it's something that doesn't meet what we have a number of issue teams that work, employment, housing, access and rights, education, to name a few. And if it meets one of their case criteria, that's something that then would get sent to that team to say, all right, team, one of our attorneys or advocates are going to get set up with this client and look at their individual issue and see what we might be able to do. If it doesn't meet that level, one of our intake advocates is going to try and provide them with what we call short-term assistance. So giving them self-advocacy advice. I think if we can assist, we want to make sure somebody is equipped with the tools to do the advocacy on their own behalf. And if that doesn't work, they can always call back and see if it's something we can assist with. So, I think our impact is to try and make sure that people are equipped with the tools to do self-advocacy. And when they're not, take those cases for them and work with them to try and, ensure that their rights are protected, whether that's ensuring they have housing or employment or just even access to a facility or building. Or that, there's not something bad happening in a facility or building, or that, students have rights to education. And so our impact is to try and make sure that, federal law is followed and or state law, if it is applicable, and ensuring the rights of Utahns with disabilities are protected.
My last question is, how can you create an inclusive and welcoming environment, including people with disabilities?
That's a very good question, Laszlo. I think that's something we're always looking to do. I think one of the places to start, honestly, for us, and this is some of the work we've been doing recently, is focusing a little bit more on education. I think a lot starts there. When you have students with disabilities, and I think in our state, what we're finding is particularly students with intellectual and developmental disabilities are often in separate classrooms, segregated classrooms, apart from the general education classroom. And I think when you start there and you start to set up students on a path that says, we're going to separate kids at a young age and not let them befriend or get to know these other kids, I think we start right there on a path towards not having an inclusive society. In our work, we see everything, all the discrimination, unfortunately. That is a part of our job. People, are fired because of their disability. People are denied housing because of their disability. And we see it and we do what we can on a legal basis to try and right that wrong. But I think as a society, we can do better. And I think a lot of that is going to start when we start to say that people with disabilities need to be included everywhere. So we start in the education system and we say that, kids with disabilities belong in the general education classroom. But then also, I think when it comes to just later in life, we need to ensure that we're not segregating people with disabilities in housing, in institutional settings or housing settings that are separate and apart from, the general population. Our goal is what you asked for. How do we get there? The inclusive society where people with disabilities are accepted everywhere. And I think that, there's a lot of pieces to that, but I would say start with our education system and try and do better there. But then just as a whole, ensuring that all of the things we do are inclusive. And I think that's housing, employment, all of it. It just has to happen. And when it doesn't, the Disability Law Center is a resource and we will do what we can to help.
Cool.